Right, we're getting ready to go live here. This is fun. Just waiting for our friends over on Instagram to get access. Cool. Here we are. This is Psychedelics Today, recording with a bunch of the team at Natural Medicine Alaska. Really excited to bring this story to the Psychedelics Today audience and learn more about Natural Medicine Alaska. So we have Noria, Gina, and David. I'm wondering if it makes sense to have a really brief intro round before we dig into what NMA is. Gina, could you start for us?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, Joe, thank you so much for inviting us on to your podcast. We really appreciate your support and for offering us the opportunity to come on today and share a little bit about NMA. So my name is Gina. I am the president of Natural Medicine Alaska. I live here in Anchorage, Alaska. And I've been operating within this space for over a decade. I got my start back in 2007 in the Peruvian Amazon, where I was introduced to ayahuasca. That experience was incredibly profound and inspired me to move back down in 2009, where I lived for 3.5 years studying with indigenous healers from the Shipibo tribe. So I've been operating in this space for a long time. And now I'm here in Alaska, and Natural Medicine Alaska was birthed last year in 2024 because we understand that there's a need to legalize these plant medicines in the state. We suffer from some of the highest rates of depression, suicide, and substance use disorders in the nation. And as we all know, anyone listening to this podcast, we're very aware that according to the research, these plant medicines can be used therapeutically. So the fact that they are illegal is absurd. And that is why we're here today. So I'd like to pass it over to my colleague, David Karabelnikoff. He was instrumental in getting Natural Medicine Alaska off the ground. And
Yeah, thank you so much, Gina. I'm David Karabelnikoff. I'm Aleut Athabascan and a member of the Connect tribe. I was born and raised in Anchorage. Growing up in Alaska, I first came into contact with plant medicines through the Native American Church when I was going to college at Fort Lewis in Durango, Colorado, and found it to be a very powerful spiritual experience, and that really changed the direction of my life into learning more about our traditional boat building ways, and as a result of that ceremony, built one of our traditional skin-on frame ikiaks. So I've had some experiences with plant medicines as well as familial experiences where my brother, who was on dialysis, was a chain smoker, and I would go to pick him up from dialysis, and the first thing he would do is light up a cigarette after leaving the life-saving treatment that he was getting. And it just broke my heart to watch him suffer from that addiction in that way. And he tried, I think, 13 times to quit smoking with conventional therapeutic methods like Chantix and whatnot. And it wasn't until he took a dose of psilocybin 5 years ago that he's been smoke-free the entire time. And I just that really like has been a powerful like influence in me seeing how these plant medicines can alter people's lives, can treat addiction, and can just help with the processing of just be a healthy option for people, and that I just strongly feel that they shouldn't be illegal, that people should be able to have access to them. And that's why I was excited to be a part of Natural Medicine Alaska.
Yeah, thank you for that. Noria, could you let us know a little bit about yourself and your interest in the space?
Sure. My name is Noria Clark. I am the Veterans Coordinator for Natural Medicine Alaska. My personal experiences have been far and wide, as I'm sure many have had in this space. Personally, I think it's been quite the guiding light in my life for helping me to work through many traumatic issues of my own. And I found that to be the same case with many of the veterans that I now work with. A lot of my prior experience has been working at Boeing and some Department of Defense contractors and things of that nature. So a lot of my time was spent working with veterans, seeing the pain and the unfortunate space that they're in really kind of pushed me into this movement after I'd realized how much it had helped me and helped to save me in so many ways. And I realized that this needed to be available for our brothers, sisters, mothers, daughters, sons, so that they can in fact have the same healing opportunities that I had. And so with the veterans that I've spoken to, it has done phenomenal work, and I would like to see many more helped. I have family who's in the military who I'm obviously very close to, and knowing that there are options out there, I think is the most important thing. So I'm really excited to be a part of this campaign because it really touches my soul, knowing that we can provide other opportunities for mental health treatments for our veterans. So for me, it's a very personal journey to bring these people into a place of healing. And thank you for bringing us on. We appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to be able to support in any way I can here. So, coming up in 2026, you all are working on a ballot initiative, and not all states have ballot initiatives, but thankfully you all do. So, Gina, can you give us a little bit, and maybe have the team comment after on what's going on with this ballot initiative and what are you trying to do there?
Yeah, absolutely. So Natural Medicine Alaska was inspired by Colorado's Prop 122, the Natural Medicine Health Act. As you know, what they did was they decriminalized natural medicines for personal use, and then they created a regulated access model. So we would like to replicate that in Alaska and expand on it. We have three core components of our initiative. Of course, the first is decriminalization. We believe that no one should be criminalized for working with these medicines, and our goal is to remove criminal penalties for adults who choose to use plant medicine responsibly. The second component is regulated therapeutic access. Our priority is to create a regulated framework for psychedelic-assisted therapy. And what's special is that under our initiative, we would like to include ibogaine therapy into the language. And so we would like to see licensed clinics opening up in Alaska as soon as 2028, if we're able to push this initiative through. And the third component is protections for traditional use. We believe that traditional healers should be protected as well. This language hasn't been included anywhere else. It wasn't included in Oregon's initiative or Colorado's initiative. But you know, what it comes down to, Joe, is that traditional healers have been using these medicines for centuries, and we believe that these practices should be respected and protected under the law. So we'd like to include language for that as well. As I mentioned before, Alaska, unfortunately, we're struggling with some of the highest rates of, depression, substance use disorders, suicide, you name it. We're suffering from it. We're number one for loneliness, unfortunately, in the United States. And we could absolutely benefit from legalizing these medicines in the state. So that's just a general overview of what we are advocating for. I'd like to pass the torch to David, who can share a little bit about our timeline and our survey results. David, if you could.
Yeah, thanks, Gina. Well, Alaska, we did some initial surveying, I think 2 years ago, that showed 65% support for decriminalization with the mental health push. And since then, we've done an additional round of surveying that shows 73% support for the ballot measure as we currently have it. So it's been an increase of almost 10%, and the last year alone has gone up. I think Alaska has probably unparalleled public support when it comes to this due to our kind of long-standing libertarian spirit in the state, as well as having been one of the first states to have both constitutional privacy provisions for cannabis, as well as being one of the first states to move into the legalization of cannabis. So we've had a history of having, leading in quote progressive policies, if you want to call it that, but also I think that there's the opportunity for Alaska to be, the North Star of psychedelic policy reform in terms of being the only state with a viable ballot measure initiative for 2026. We would be the third state to pass, regulated medical access, as well as the decriminalization model. And so by having Alaska be the next state to do it, it kind of creates um, a tipping point in the political, landscape nationally. So I'm really excited to see that Alaska can help lead the change addressing, our mental health crisis, whether that's, PTSD that people suffer from, whether that's substance abuse disorder, whether that's depression. It's just there's a variety of things that natural medicines can open up the landscape for when it comes to mental health that would promote community wellness and well-being for all Alaskans, and I think reduce the drains on the systems that we currently see from those mental health and public health issues. So I think it would be overall a net benefit to the state. And then getting into the timeline for our campaign, we're we're hoping to get our legal language drafted and do another round of polling to test our ballot measure language here in the next month. We're looking to raise $100,000 by the end of the month to do that, and definitely appreciate any contributions or support that people can make to help us. We want this to be also a grassroots supported effort, as well as looking for institutional level supporters. But we really believe in that this should be a community-driven initiative and appreciate small dollar contributions to this campaign. It's been I think a long time coming, to see from when I first met with Gina at the AKEAC meeting a few years ago, with looking at doing local decriminalization efforts to now having done some statewide surveys to see that we really do have a viable statewide campaign here in Alaska, and that we can be the North Star of the psychedelic policy reform movement in the United States.
Thank you for that. Noria, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, David's always hard to follow. A few things that I would like to add that we would like to also implement in some of our policy that we'll be testing in the legal language in the ballot initiative. So as David mentioned, we're looking to raise $100,000 by April so next month. We need to raise this $100,000 so that we can get to a place where we can do better polling for representative polling and to test ballot measure language. We also are going to be able to draft legal language with that. And so that can then move us into our second phase, which David could come back to. But one of the things that we would like to test in that language, and one of the things that we would really like to see, is we would like to see people in our state, we would like to be the first state actually to allow first responders and active duty military members to be able to partake in these healing medicines without having any kind of prosecution or persecution in any way. So that's one of the things that I am looking to bring to the table that we're really hoping to add on to that, because Alaska actually has the highest veterans in the nation per capita. And obviously we have large PTSD rates, which PTSD rates are not only with our military members. Unfortunately, as Gina had mentioned, we are #1 for everything bad, which is also domestic violence and things of that nature. And as we all know, PTSD comes along with that as well. So it's really, really imperative right now that we get this funding to where we can get to our next phase. But I think that it will be monumental for us to be able to change the landscape of it, to allow these first responders, nurses, medical professionals, these active duty military members to be able to move in a space that maybe they feel more comfortable in. A lot of my conversations with people have been that they are not, they're not really getting the help that they need from the VA or from some of these other sources. And so I think the time is now, and our state is in a perfect position to be able to allow this to happen in 2026, to put this on the ballot. So we're really leaps and bounds ahead of many other states. And especially in some of the polling that we've had, we've already done some polling and we have well over 70% of Alaskans who are supportive. And we'll go more into that, but I think that we're really looking to make some changes that other states have not made yet, or we're looking to incorporate things that other states are looking to incorporate, because we want to help to make this a national movement, right? We don't want this just a state here or a state there. We would like to see everybody have healing. And so we're hoping to be a blueprint for that as well.
Brilliant. So this is definitely huge. And there's a lot of firsts here with Alaska. I don't believe we've yet seen a indigenous-led movement. And I think that's definitely a major win. Finally, we have that domestically. And I'm kind of curious about feedback you're hearing from people, just, N of one stories, just really great stories that indicate people are excited about this in Alaska. Any of you want to jump on that?
Apologies, sorry, I'm having technical issues on my end. Yeah, so in general, I would say that Alaskans are very supportive and very enthusiastic about the work that we're doing. We've gotten a lot of feedback from our community members. I also run a nonprofit called the Alaskan Theogenic Awareness Council. We host monthly events, educational events in Anchorage, and we've had wonderful turnouts at those events. And I'd also like to say that, yes, absolutely, Joe, this is an Indigenous-led movement. We've been actively working on building relationships with tribal leaders in the state. And so that's required us to really focus on education, because what it comes down to is that one of our primary challenges is shifting the stigma and the narrative surrounding the use of these medicines. Many people aren't informed about the therapeutic value of these medicines, and in general, there are a lot of misconceptions that people are still they're still spreading about these plant medicines. And so we've been working very hard to shift that narrative and generate more support. And yeah, I don't know, Noria, you're our gal out in the field. Have you heard any stories from folks?
Gina says that because, I should start my own podcast called Noria Talks, ... a lot. I talk to everyone. And it is a good thing because we've been spreading the word. And yes, I've been hearing a ton of stories. And the interesting thing about this movement in the state of Alaska, so some interesting things to know about Alaska first, is that our right to privacy is actually in our Constitution. It happened in the 70s. It was passed well over 80%. I think it was like 86% or something. It was really high. And the two other states that had come in around that time to include privacy in their Constitution were, I believe, Florida and California, and they were in like the 60 percentile range. So Alaskans value very much their libertarian style spirit. And so the beautiful thing about this movement is that it's very nonpartisan. And in fact, we don't even talk politics in our group ever, which is fantastic. We only talk about the things that we need to get done, which is lovely. But what kind of happens in that is I've been able to speak to people on kind of both sides of the fence. And the interesting thing is I have not really heard bad things, be it people who lean more conservative or people who maybe lean more progressive or Democrat or however you'd like to put it. So the phenomenal thing is I ran into a guy in in one of the Claudia Brothers coffees here, a coffee shop, when I was working with the team actually. And he asked me what I was doing because I've worked in politics for a while now here. And I tend to have run in a little bit more conservative circles, I guess you'd say. And so he was wondering what I was doing. And I was a little concerned to tell conservatives in this state what I was doing because I didn't know how they would take it. I thought that many of them would be upset. And so I was kind of ready for that backlash. But it was actually quite the opposite. The person I ran into was just like, oh my God, you're never going to believe this. I actually just got back from an ayahuasca retreat in Peru, and it's been this non-liturgical thing, and it saved my marriage. So I think that people are going outside of our state to find these experiences and to get this healing, but it's such a cost. And a lot of our veterans can't afford that. But I think that the amazing stories that I'm hearing is that people are very open to this. And it is not a partisan issue in this state because of where we stand in our privacy and where we stand, like I said, in our libertarian spirit. So the stories I'm hearing have actually all been very positive. I've heard a few people who have had questions, but that's things that, we'll be able to solve with the educational portion as we move forward. So we're really getting out there, though, and trying to talk to everybody. And the support has actually been really, really great. And I think a lot of people are already kind of leaning towards these options. It's just making it available to them now.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think you're definitely onto something there. This is already in the zeitgeist. People are talking about it and accessing these things on their own, with and without support. Sometimes, like you say, traveling to the Amazon at great expense. It's not like Peru is right next to Alaska, right? Like that's a monstrous flight, and I couldn't imagine. Thankfully, you have now Oregon and Colorado online. I don't know if they're really competitive, with the jungle, but at least they're domestic, right? You don't have to go out of the country, which is a big win. And I remember meeting you all at a Denver event, or a bunch of you at the Denver event. It was really, really inspiring to hear how there is a lot of alignment between kind of the values in Colorado, and how, we have a pretty hefty veteran population as well, tons of bases here. And yeah, there is an interest in the state in excluding a lot of these folks from these services, which is, I think, quite tragic because they need it quite a bit. And, thankfully, I started recently hearing about charities who are working to finance people to be able to go through these services. So we're actually hitting accessibility. We're hitting bigger populations. Clinicians are allowed to work in this, unlike in Oregon. So yeah, the fact that therapists and doctors can, at least be a little bit involved. Therapists can be pretty heavily involved, actually. And it is pretty great. And I remember we were kind of joking a little bit, like, yeah, just like Colorado, but let's do it way better. And like, I loved that kind of line. Is there anything any of you want to maybe speak to around that? Like how this might actually be better performing than Colorado?
Actually, if it's okay, I would like to say a couple of things. So yes, I mean, obviously we have the landscape of Alaska. I've lived in Colorado. Colorado is absolutely stunning, but there is nothing in comparison to the natural beauty of Alaska. It has its own healing benefits just by being here. I promise you, because every time I leave the state, I'm like, when can I go back home? As much as I love the lower 48 or anywhere else, it's great to be home. But that's actually something that we're looking at working on, I guess, more of our community outreach perspective. So I'm actually glad that you brought that up, because I was looking for the perfect place to kind of insert this. We are actually, myself as a veterans coordinator, now not as NMA, but as a veterans coordinator, we were looking at trying to reach out to people who would actually help to fund things like this. We would like to take a group of veterans, myself and some other folks in a different organization would like to take veterans down to Colorado from Alaska so that they can experience some of that, the healing properties that can take place. And like you said, that expense is much, much less in comparison. And we were actually hoping that this may put us into a position where people can hear about the work that we're doing with that and maybe donate to that as well. And we can include those links and everything else that needs to be done for that. But I would like to see a few of our veterans go down there, or a few of our first responders or nurses, and see, what it is firsthand to experience this in America. So that they do have that comfort. They don't have to have that passport. That expense isn't there necessarily for them. And we can try and help to start to show what this can really do. And hopefully podcasts like this will help to catalyst us into other places where people like maybe Bob Parsons of Big Daddy would be interested in helping to fund some of these veterans going down there. I know that he's a Marine, or Joe Rogan has been very, very positive about all of these things. So we're in a position to where I agree with you completely, Joe, that we are finally in a space where people are starting to fund this. And we're really hoping that they'll not only fund the campaign so that we can actually have these centers here so people don't have to leave, and so that we can bring people in. But at least for now, we would like to start seeing some of our veterans and some of our folks go down to the lower 48 to experience this medicine. So hopefully that answers your question okay.
Yeah, I love that. And anything about specifically what would make theoretically the program y'all are working on in Alaska maybe higher performing than what we have in Colorado currently? And Colorado hasn't even really started yet, right? Like, I don't know that there has been a dosing session yet in the frame.
Yeah. So as far as how our initiative will differ, one, as I mentioned before, we'll be including traditional use in the language. We feel that that is a necessary component, and again, that hasn't been done yet. We'd also like to include ibogaine into the language. We would like to be the first state in the U.S. to open up ibogaine clinics. So that is a very big goal of ours, and we've been building relationships with folks in the psychedelic community at large who are experts in this. So we're hoping to bring on a team of experts who can help us to implement the perfect program once we get around to it. And then as far as some of the other policies that we're planning on including, we'd like to provide, as Noria mentioned, legal protections for active duty members and law enforcement and first responders. We'd also like to include language for home use. I don't believe that has been done yet in Oregon or Colorado. And of course, we would like to also include language for record sealing for past offenses. I believe that was recently added to the Natural Medicine Health Act as well. But we're still building our initiative. We're open to ideas. We're open to suggestions. We would like this to be a community effort. And yeah, we're here to listen, to learn, to grow together. And of course, Joe, I know you've been operating in this space for a very long time, and you've given us some wonderful suggestions. Just want you to know that we are taking those into consideration, and we do appreciate you. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. I kind of want to talk about financing this kind of thing for a bit. So this is obviously a huge project. There's going to be legal fees. There's going to be a lot of time that's needed to, educate people around this. Not only folks in government, but the people of Alaska, right? We have to spend time saying, hey, this is why this is a clever thing to do. This is why it fits with our values and our interests. Let's go for it. So can you talk a little bit about, who are some folks that have been interested in donating to date? And then, you mentioned Parsons earlier. That's a great one. There's groups like Psychedelic Science Funders Collaborative that have been interested in state models, but who has been interested so far? What do you all need, and what kind of folks are you hoping to get involved in terms of fundraising?
Yeah, so it's been challenging to fundraise. Unfortunately, a lot of investors and funders in the space are reluctant to invest because of, unfortunately, the FDA, as you know, Joe, recently rejected MDMA as a novel treatment. Also, we recently lost in Massachusetts question 4. And so it's been challenging to fundraise for our campaign. We've been working to demonstrate that we do have a viable campaign, and we're hoping that funders do hop on board sooner rather than later. But right now, it's been a grassroots effort. So we've been rallying folks in the community to help us to get the word out, spread awareness about our campaign, inform funders in the community that we are live. We have a winning campaign, and all we need is some help getting across the finish line. Of course, as David mentioned, about 73% of Alaskans would vote yes on our initiative. We do need to conduct more polling to verify that, but as Noria mentioned, we are a libertarian state, and Alaskans are really primed for this. As far as our strategy goes, we're following a multi-phase funding approach. Phase 1 is we're fundraising to conduct more polling and, of course, to cover legal fees so that we can get language drafted up for the initiative. And that is going to cost us about $100,000. Phase 2 funding, that's going to get a little more complicated, and I would like to pass the torch to David. If you could explain what our Phase 2 funding strategy is, that would be great.
Yeah, for phase 2, in order to get on the ballot measure, the whole campaign is looking to raise $2 million. And in order to get on to the campaign, Alaska's has a requirement for getting 10% of the voters in the previous election out of 3/4 of the House districts and 7% of signatures from those House districts. So it's a pretty, we need to have ballot measures as signature collecting happen across the state that used to have 4 time zones, and that is 1/5 the landmass of the United States. And if you overlay Alaska onto the lower 48, it stretches from California to Florida and from Texas to North Dakota. So it's a huge area that requires travel and that requires people to go out into rural communities, and in order to get ballot measures selected from all of those different House districts. So it's not a simple undertaking, as even though we have a smaller population, there still is those requirements to make the ballot measure to get on the ballot. And as well as Alaska it's a unique uh, political place, but I really do feel like Alaska has the opportunity to be the win to bring back the psychedelic movement in the national sense. And after the loss in Massachusetts, I feel like having another state that's able to successfully pull off a ballot measure initiative that could coordinate the resources across the United States into Alaska and for psychedelic policy reform to get the win that the movement so desperately needs right now, and be a turning point in the psychedelic policy reform to bring back from the loss in Massachusetts with the win in Alaska, because we have the 73% support is a winning level of support in Alaska. We're happy to do more polling in order to demonstrate our viability, but we strongly believe that we've already exceeded that threshold of showing that we can win in Alaska, that it's worthy of attracting investment from the national psychedelic community, and that we're able to do a campaign in Alaska that is going to be meaningful in moving psychedelic policy reform forward on a national platform, to be the next state that be the only state in 2026 that has a campaign on the ballot and is able to, through direct democracy, be able to show the will of the people in this. And then I think that having bills passed through state legislators will be much more likely to happen once we have this critical mass of 3 states moving forward through ballot measure initiatives. I just feel that that eventually at some point would be able to pass legislation, but that hasn't happened so far to this point. And so it's been left up to the direct will of the voters and the direct will of people. And that to me is, I think, just a really the way that it's going to have to be done for psychedelic policy reform, at least for the next state. And then once, Alaska's been able to pass, that then, legislative processes could potentially be the way that that future legislations happens.
Thank you for that. Um, there's a lot there, and this idea of direct democracy, I think, is really interesting. I've been watching a lot of these state-run movements, and what happens often is that the will of the people of the state is often kind of overlooked when drafting, like the insights from people who live there, and maybe have been at this for a decade plus in terms of advocacy work and local decriminalization initiatives. We're seeing some similar and interesting dynamics in Washington State currently, where a lot of the decriminalization groups have been working and are probably interested in a regulated framework, have been just somewhat overlooked in terms of their involvement in drafting bills and making sure this meets the needs of the people who've been working on this. And if you have any thoughts on that kind of a situation and how like your process might engage the people better. Still muted. Still muted. Sorry.
So apologies. We've had support across the board for all of the components of our initiative. And yeah, I mean, could you clarify your question?
Sure. So, like, a big problem is big money coming in and doing this stuff without necessarily a lot of stakeholder involvement or inclusion in the development. So, just kind of curious about like your perspective on, perhaps how Massachusetts went down, and then also, what we're seeing actively in Washington State currently.
Yeah, I don't know if we can get into this on this call. So yeah, we're aware of what happened in Massachusetts, and we have been working on building a relationship with the folks over at New Approach. They're aware of the work that we're doing here. They are supportive of the policies that we're pushing for. I think that their concern is that they are reluctant to fund another statewide campaign only because they can't afford to lose another campaign. I mean, Massachusetts was a big hit. That being said, we are very well organized here in the state. We've built an A team. We are in it to win it. We are working with one of the premier campaign management firms in the state called Ship Creek Group, and they have a wonderful track record of winning campaigns. So as far as language goes, we're pretty determined to pass the initiative that we have with little, if any, changes. However, it has been a struggle to fundraise. And again, for all of the reasons that we mentioned here on this podcast, it just isn't an easy environment right now to fundraise in. But yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it's complicated and it's hard. Yeah, the idea that you all are seeking funding from the traditional groups who have funded this in the past, but they're shell shocked, I guess, about what happened in Massachusetts, and perhaps a little, I don't want to say embarrassed, but I guess embarrassed because they made big promises to their donors, and they have very substantial donors. Like some of the wealthiest people in the country are their donors, right? And to have not won is a really tough blow. And I think it's a really multi-causal thing that happened there in Massachusetts, but it's too bad it's impacting your ability to access those finances, those monies to like make this major change in Alaska. Yeah, so let's hope others want to come in and donate at scale, because this is, the greatest of the states, at the very least in terms of size, if not natural beauty. Yeah, Nori, I have the same feeling. If I leave Colorado for too long, I freak out. Like, get me home now. But yeah, I understand the scope and scale of Alaska is just mind-boggling. And yeah, so how do we start to make traction? And it's getting people involved, and there's probably a number of ways people can get involved. So I'm sure people can donate. Is there let's actually talk about the donation pathway, and if there's room for people to actually get involved and volunteer hours with you all.
Well, Joe, that's the thing is, yes, we're happy to have volunteers. The best place to go is to our website, which is naturalmedicinealaska.org. And that is going to be the way where anybody can donate as an individual, but they can also find ways to contact us. We will be looking for grassroots support. We are a grassroots group. Okay. So just so everybody understands how grassroots we are, there's 4 of us. Okay. And 5 with Kevin's help in Colorado. So there are 5 of us who are currently unpaid and have been for a year, which is fine to a certain extent, obviously. But we believe in this so much, and we know that this state is the state to make this happen, that any kind of support, being it likes, shares, spreading the word in some way, obviously financially is really where we need the support right now, because attorneys don't work for free, unlike the grassroots supporters. So that would be monumental. And then in the state or even outside of the state, they can always reach us through the website. And that is going to be the best way to really try and help us out. But financially really is where we need, because if we don't get this financing, we're going to have to look at a later ballot measure. And right now we're in a really good position in Alaska. We've already spoken with the governor's office and legislators and senators. We know who's in office, right? Who knows what it's going to be in 2028, which is the next time that we can do a ballot initiative. And it's a midterm. So for political standing wise, the time is now. And let me just ask everybody this. I mean, this is really the question here, right? Is the time now or later for healing? I mean, are we going to keep waiting? Are people going to keep dying today that could have been helped yesterday? Because this is getting a little crazy at this point, right? I mean, I think we would all agree. The time is now. The time to act is now. The time to support campaigns like ours is now. If you have something going on in your state legislator, start reaching out to those folks. But our state right now is the state that has the viability and the ability and the standing behind it of the citizens to actually propel this into the next phase, so that people in the rest of the lower 48 can actually experience these same things. I mean, we've seen this with cannabis, right? Once one state kind of catches on, the rest of them do. And we want to be that blueprint. We really want to build upon what everybody else is working on. And so again, is the time now or is it later for healing? And I would argue that the time is now. I know veterans who just died recently in our state. Okay, we just lost somebody. That is ridiculous. That is ridiculous when these people could have had healing. So again, I encourage people to to donate on this, to donate to our cause, because we are a state that can get this done. And the fact that we're going to have ibogaine clinics available is massively huge in comparison to any other state structure right now. So we are the state to really try and stand behind, because we can get it done. If there's one thing that Alaskans have besides a libertarian spirit, it's also a can-do, kick-ass attitude. Because with the weather we have here, we had like 12 feet of snow last year. You got to learn real fast to be, moving and shaking and keeping things going. So we know that this is going to be a winning campaign. We just need to have the support now. Thank you for letting me go off on that, Joe.
No, I love that. It's important. And I was just at in Austin, Texas at South by Southwest. I got the opportunity to see Brian Hubbard speak. Are you all familiar with him and his work? Yeah, the spirit he carries into this ibogaine topic is incredible. And I'm really excited that he's getting a great platform. He's certainly got some really great things to say about ibogaine and ibogaine research and the opioid relief fund settlements that we all should be able to access in our own states to try to make headway to make things right a little bit. Yeah, I'm looking at the numbers. I'm like, how did you calculate a human life there? Good God. And a lot of the people benefiting from the fund are the same people that sold the drug. It's amazing how it worked out. And he's got a whole great story there that I hope to amplify more. Anyway, iboga and ibogaine, I'm very optimistic about. I believe we can do it very safely. And the clinical result we can see from ibogaine is unreal. I was in touch with some folks. I think it was the chief of the Squamish Nation outside Vancouver, and they were doing some interesting ibogaine work, and they actually even had stakeholder inclusion from the Bwiti in Gabon, which is fascinating as they're developing their work. So I think there's just so much interesting work and collaborations left to be done here, and I would love to see Alaska leading that. I do wonder about like how to pull money from people who are doing, I guess, retreats would be the business. I don't know that biotech really cares because they don't necessarily want the state model to proceed, right? Because they're more of a federal thing. But folks with a vested interest in, I don't know about vested interest. I just think like folks who understand how many people we can heal and how many people we can get off opioids and help them break their addiction. There's also, I'm sure this is preaching to the choir with all of you, but when you look at the performance rates of rehab clinics, it's tragically low. And we can do a lot better. We have the technology, we have the tools, we have the traditions to pull from too, to help inform how to do this best. And with that natural beauty of Alaska. And Gina, I kind of remember you speaking to this in Denver, like the impact boost of being in amazing places, um, just gigantic landscapes, and with the awe that comes with nature of that scale, plus these treatments, I think we could see some amazing healing that we wouldn't necessarily see at a dirty hospital in New York City, right? No shade on NYU and Bellevue Hospital; they're doing amazing stuff, but that's not where I want to consume any of these things for healing. Yeah. So, what kinds of allies have you found so far in the movement?
So you mentioned Brian Hubbard. We had an opportunity to meet with him recently in Iceland for the Psychedelics as Medicine conference. Brian is incredible, amazing human being, and he's very supportive of our campaign. We also had an opportunity to meet with Rick Doblin, who is very supportive of our campaign as well. And then Paul Stamets. I don't know if you noticed, but Paul Stamets shared a post yesterday for Natural Medicine Alaska. So we really do appreciate him. Thank you, Paul. Yeah, so we do have a lot of support. We have all the moral support in the world, Joe. We're just lacking that financial support, right? It would be wonderful if it could translate into financial support.
Right.
But Brian, speaking of Brian Hubbard, so we are organizing a psychedelic conference here in Alaska this August 15th and 16th. It's called Arctic Visions. It's going to be held in Anchorage at the University of Alaska at Anchorage. And Brian Hubbard is a speaker. So he's coming up to hang out with us, and hopefully we can put him in contact with, other folks in the community here who work in psychedelic assisted therapy. So.
Yeah, it would be really interesting to get him plugged in with the people who are talking about the Opioid Relief Fund. Like, this whole initiative is gigantic, and there's so many stakeholders and possible ways to get funds into a place that could help finance this. I wonder. You have to convince a lot of lawyers, so it would be tricky. But accessing that Opioid Relief Fund money, at least in small part, to pass this, such as it's easier for Alaska to do some research. Research through treatment even. So, we don't have to just do normal clinical trials. But anyway, yeah, we need to find those folks. And I love that Paul helped. Glad you're lined up with Brian Hubbard and Rick. That's awesome. And do you have anybody else notable coming to your conference that you'd want to share about?
We have quite a few people. You can just visit our website. It's www.arctic-visions.com. We have Baba Masha's coming out. Matt Johnson, Leonard Picard. We have a whole roster of incredible speakers coming to Alaska. We had our first event here last year in August, and it was sold out. Very successful. We got a lot of great media coverage. MSN picked us up. So it's been, we've been making waves here in the state.
I love that. I love that you have major networks covering it. And I wonder about national coverage this year. I think that would be really hopeful. There's only so much of the current news cycle we want to keep consuming, and there has to be like other topics we can dig into. And this is one of them, especially because there's like hope behind it. And, we've had so much loss with the opioid crisis and so much opportunity for improvement of care for the veteran populations. The VA is trying its hardest, but it's hard to move a machine that is that large. And yeah, you all can relate. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm glad you all are on this. It's not an easy project, but when you win, it's going to feel really great. And any other kind of stories? We've got maybe about 5-10 minutes left. Anything else we want to really include here to make sure people are aware of?
Again, I would like to touch point on trying to get our veterans to Colorado for some healing. One of the speakers actually will be at Arctic Visions is an incredible helicopter pilot by the name of Beth Law. She is prior Army, And yeah, hearing her story, you can look up some of her stuff on YouTube, and we'll link some of the stuff on our social media. But again, hearing these stories from Alaskans and Alaskan veterans and Alaskans in general who this has helped has been really, really phenomenal. And I'm really hoping that, a lot of these people don't have to keep operating in the underground. These are everybody's, again, there's so many veterans here, but some of these other folks are just Tim's mom from soccer practice or whatever, you know what I mean, who are microdosing. I mean, everybody's talking about this on a different level. And so at this point in this state, it's time to stop kind of skating around this, hockey terminology here in Alaska, but it's time to kind of stop skating around and to just land that goal. And the goal is to get the healing into Alaska. So I know I keep hitting on that, but again, a veteran like Beth Law, who had to go to Jamaica to get this, she is going to be speaking at Art of Visions. She has come on board with helping us with this because she knows how imperative it is. Actually, she just made a video that we're gonna be shooting out here soon, so that people can kind of see who are the people who are experiencing this in Alaska and what has it done for them, and why should they not have to leave this state. So that would be my big encouragement, is to keep thinking, you guys, about your brothers and sisters. And again, this paves a place and a way for the rest of the lower 48 to start jumping on board. The more that we see states come on and be able to have good policy and good framework, and it actually be helping people, as we're seeing in Colorado, we didn't see any, crazy things happen. Nothing, the moon didn't fall out of the sky or anything. I think that we'll start to see that this progresses into many more states, and that will be beneficial for all of us.
Yeah, following on that, the idea that veterans will need to leave the country to heal the things that they, the major injuries, internal and otherwise, and having to leave the country to get the healing they need is just quite outrageous. And I think a lot of the Navy SEAL groups have done a lot of really good work hitting on that, and even Heroic Hearts themselves have. But go ahead.
Well, and I completely agree with you. And there's so many people out there, so many veterans out there, like, Tim Spalla out in Colorado, who we've been working with and talking to. There are so many people out there who are working for this. But like you said, these veterans, a lot of these veterans that we're looking at are homeless. A lot of them are having trouble keeping jobs. Back in the day when I worked at a Starbucks, they're like, oh, we're going to hire veterans. Do you think that somebody has gone to Iraq and been left on an Iraqi army base cares about working at a Starbucks, and that you want 7 pumps of sugar? No. I mean, come on, man, be realistic. So these people cannot afford necessarily to go out of state. Okay. They are already working to survive here. And when we already have a perfect landscape, like you said, this place is healing in itself. You just come here, you touch down, you're like, oh, thank goodness for Mother Nature. I feel better already. But to be able to have these opportunities, healing is not a privilege. Okay. It is a right. We have a right to heal. And now all we have to do is get past this legal mumbo jumbo, which is called the law, and put it on this ballot so that we can actually heal. It's kind of crazy that we have to do that, but we're working within the mechanisms that we have. And so the time is now. Again, now or later. How many lives have to be lost? We just lost a brother the other day. How many more? How many more? Mm-hmm. That was somebody's son, their dad, their brother. Mm-hmm. Could have been my brother. Luckily, my brother is good, but that's not okay. So I'm sorry I keep beating this horse, but I'm just saying, like, this is ridiculous. And so we need to get after it. So again, any funding or any support that people have, and if you can't, then share it with all your friends who got a bunch of money, okay? Ask them if they want to give us $5, $10, $500, whatever you got. The likes, the shares, the comments, like, we appreciate them. We really do. And we appreciate the moral support. But again, like Gina says, that doesn't really translate into paying, any of the bills. So, and we appreciate your platform for allowing us to be on here and to speak so passionately about what we believe in and the way that we're trying to pave a path forward. So, Joe, it's really been an incredible experience. Thank you. I just wanted to say, for me personally, I appreciate you.
Thanks. Yeah, and to dogpile 22 to 45 veteran suicides per day, and the number could be higher. But yeah, that's something we need to stop. David?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I've been listening to Psychedelics Today for years as a podcast, so it just has been kind of surreal to be on the other end of the microphone at this point. And it's been, like I just have felt that plant medicine has the opportunity, like natural medicine has the opportunity to be a transformative thing to make Alaska a better place. This being my homeland, is like I've been involved in the conventional 12-step space for nearly 20 years, and I just haven't seen the level of success that we would like to see out of that when it comes to addiction treatment. And so trying to find other, methodologies, especially with the polysubstance abuse that we're seeing with the mix of fentanyl and opioids and methamphetamines, that comorbidity of addiction and that polysubstance abuse is something that historically, like the 12 steps wasn't invented in that type of drug intervention. And so I feel like having these ibogaine clinics potentially in Alaska is leveling up the intervention to be at the same level of the addiction. And with the work like folks like Brian Hubbard are doing, showing 60% success rates, compared to 6% in the conventional treatment, is just so profoundly different in terms of its effectiveness. And like, why would we continue doing something that has a 6% success rate with a 28-day standard treatment when you have the possibility of getting a 60% success rate with natural medicine? Like, that just, to me, just seems like such an obvious improvement based on efficiency and effectiveness, that that's why I'm really passionate about this campaign and putting so much time and energy and effort into it to see it be on the ballot measure for 2026. That we can change the lives of Alaskans and also be a catalytic component to the national psychedelic policy reform movement. So I really appreciate the chance coming on to Psychedelics today to be able to share our message about what's going on in Alaska with the broader community, and ask for support and try to be the North Star of the psychedelic policy reform for the United States.
Yeah, thank you, David. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening to Psychedelics Today and being willing to be so involved. And Gina, anything you'd like to close with?
Yeah, I just want to thank you again, Joe, for having us on today, and thank your audience. We appreciate your support, even if it is just moral support. We'll accept it all. I would like to say that, yes, this is a grassroots-led effort. Everyone who is working with us feels very passionately about this cause, and so it is heart-led. And that being said, we would love for it to be heart-funded as well, if possible. So thank you so much, Joe. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you all for being here. This is awesome. I really hope I can keep contributing in some way or another. So please keep me posted. Everybody, please follow all of their pages and get on the email list and get on the website. And if you know people who are passionate about Alaska and passionate about these plants and fungi that can be really beneficial to us, check it out, Natural Medicine Alaska. All right, thank you all, and can't wait for more.